ago, Manchester United, Vesti's old club, became the first team ever to win the double-double. But for 26 years, the club that was considered the self-styled king of football failed to win the one prize that mattered, the league title. This is the story of those lean years, a story of small victories and big money, brothers in arms and sibling rivalry, an everyday football family history.
I was just overwhelmed, really, seeing my heroes in real life.
It wasn't a case of having to sit down haggling about money or anything like that. It was just a case of, yeah, I'm coming.
You walk into Old Trafford, 60,000 people, you can't hear a word.
I didn't want to leave that boardroom that afternoon without having signed. I really wanted to play for Manchester United.
People talk about the Liverpools and the Tottenhams and the Arsenals, but United is a massive club.
90% of footballers in England would love to join Manchester United, and the other 10% were liars.
Rah, 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 have you heard the latest? Rah, 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 United are the greatest. Rah.
In 1968, Matt Busby, the man who built Manchester United, finally won the European Cup.
With Manchester United.
10 years previously, on a runway in Munich, his team had died whilst pursuing that dream.
Charlton, another!
This was the culmination of all my ideas, my ambitions.
In 1969, Busby moved upstairs to become general manager, leaving the actual football to others.
Who can follow a man like you as manager of United?
Oh, I don't know about that.
His legacy was an ageing squad, over-reliant on a star core, which had peaked in Europe. The men the board charged with reinvigorating the club, first Wilf McGuinness and then Franco Farrell, wilted in Busby's long shadow. By 1972, the team was sinking fast.
So the Stretford end is stunned into silence.
Busby, now a club director, looked north to his own homeland for a man big enough to fill his shoes. Scotland team manager Thomas Henderson Docherty.
I was offered the salary on the phone before I came down. Even before Frank and Farrell got the sack. I knew, in other words, I knew what I was getting before Frank was leaving me.
He came in and it was like a breath of fresh air after Frank. You know, he was very outgoing, he was very positive, very enthusiastic, and he was wonderful.
He wanted to be the next manager to put Manchester United back on the trail again, you know. And the way he was going to do it was by building a completely new team.
There was a lot of players cheating. They were on the treatment table all week and passed the fitness test on the Friday and played on the Saturday, and they're back in the treatment table on the Monday. That was a regular routine for them.
I mean, you don't say that about people, about old pros that have done whatever they've done down through their life and maybe had a good career. You don't throw them aside as if they're nothing. You've got to have a great deal of respect for people that have done great things in football.
Docherty faced some difficult decisions, particularly those concerning the future of Busby's Holy Trinity: Dennis Law, George Best and Bobby Charlton. The first to read the rooms was Charlton, who saved Docherty a job by retiring.
The first gentleman of football makes his last appearance in the Football League. Bobby Charlton coming out to mark this momentous occasion.
The hardest part was getting rid of the older players, because it's a wonderful club, wonderful supporters, and it's very hard to get players to leave Manchester United. Easy to get them to come there, but no one wants to leave it, because when you leave a club like that, be it as a player or as a coach or as a manager, there's only one way you go, and that's downtown.
The second of the mythical trio to go was Law, or to give him his full title, King Dennis of Old Trafford. He was deposed by Docherty.
Dennis was one of the players I felt, in my opinion, when I took it over Old Trafford, he was swinging the lead.
You know, you're talking about a legend at Old Trafford. What do you do with it? What do you do with a legend?
He seldom trained when I was at the club. he was one of the ones that was on the treatment table.
What happened? I was probably past my best. Good answer, that short, but good.
I got him in, told them what I was going to do, give them a free transfer. And I told them early, rather than tell them at the end of the season, when there's a rush for free transfer players. I told them in ample time.
He told Dennis that he'd had a new contract the following year and go home, have a good summer. When Dennis got home, saw the television, put in the transfer list.
I've always told the player to his face what I was going to do or what I intended to do. So then when I went to the board with that, it wouldn't come as a shock to them, and they knew that that was on the agenda.
And how did he break the news to you that you were perhaps past your best?
I found out in the newspaper, yes.
And you were pretty unhappy?
Well, you'd be disappointed, aren't you?
Meanwhile, Busby had persuaded George Best to return from self-imposed exile. He was proving to be a headache.
They came back, and it was a mistake. And then I decided that we'd let him go.
Those of you who are fed up with George Best and have written telling me so will be relieved to learn that Tommy Docherty left him out of our next cup tie.
He left me out because I'd missed training on the Thursday. And I basically I'd said to him, if I don't play, if I'm not good enough to play against Plymouth, I won't play again. And that was the end of it. I left after the game and didn't go back.
Any man at 27 years of age in the prime, and arguably at the time, one of the best three players on this earth, who can walk out on the game at 27 years of age just before he's reached his peak, there's got to be something wrong with him.
Docherty could now build a team loyal only to him, bringing in players he could trust from north of the border, cocky youngsters like Lou Macari.
Well, I think, when I came here from Celtic, there was a lot of big stars, and I don't think really that they trained hard enough and, they worked hard enough. I found the training very easy when I came here, simply because no one else wanted to train.
But Docherty still worried that his control was being undermined. Having a staunch Busby loyalist, Pat Creran, for an assistant didn't help.
We'd found a job for him, for the want of a better word. I went along with it, and it was a disaster. The best thing you can do as a manager, if you've got an old pro who's spreading the gospel, the wrong gospel I might add, is to get him on his bike as quick as you possibly can.
I think at the end of the day it was probably a relief for me because I couldn't put up with it. Oh, just the lies that was going on at the club at that particular time.
Paddy and I fell out over that and were never the same. Enemies, really. I was never bitter, but he was. And all I did was my job, saying I'd made a mistake.
Docherty's new blood was not yet circulating properly. In April 1974, his United found themselves on the lip of relegation, facing a Manchester City squad which now included one of their own, King Dennis.
Well, I had to play. I was a professional player, wasn't I? Had to play in the game.
Why didn't you want to play?
Well, of course, it was against United. It was Old Trafford. They were having a bit of a lean time. It could be disastrous for them if they got beat, so I didn't particularly want to play in the game. Had to play.
It was no score, and a few minutes to go, Dennis scored with a back heel.
I remember the ball coming sort of on my left. Somehow he just sort of let it go past him and he flicked his heel.
Dennis has done it!
But I'll never forget the look in Dennis's face. I thought you were supposed to be happy when you scored a goal. But I'll never forget the look as long as I live.
We knew we were going down. I mean, we'd prepared for it from Christmas onwards because we were we just couldn't win at all. But when it finally happened, when he backheeled that ball in, it was numb. It was an awful feeling.
You lot say you're fairly disappointed.
Well, disappointed, yes. Of course, when the goal went in, the people came on the field and the game got stopped, and by the time they got them all off, the manager at that particular time was Tony Book, and he decided to remove me from the field of play, so that was my last touch ever of a ball in league football.
While the King abdicated, United found themselves in the second division.
I'd never ever been in a relegated team in my whole career, so it was something I wouldn't want again.
I felt personally I deserved the sack for going down, because I'd been there about a year, just a year and a bit, and I thought the results in that period of time should have been better than what they were.
He was very positive, even in going down. He was very positive. Mind you, he didn't know whether to believe him or not.
But Busby and the board did believe him. They relaxed their recent habit of sacking the manager in times of trouble. Doc's red and white army was on the march.
And the good thing that came out of it, we spent a year in a lower division. We gathered together as a team. Probably as teammates we got better as well.
This year we're going forward and attacking teams because before the games we think we can beat them. I think that's the difference.
Jerry Daly, McElroy!
At the end of a season malleting Fulham, Cardiff and Notts County, the Docs still had unfinished business with Busby's last remaining acolyte, club captain Willie Morgan.
When I came home from the World Cup, I got a bad eye injury playing tennis.
He wasn't on form, it was his timing. It wasn't his ability, it was his timing. I think it was due to the eye operation.
He called me in and said, look, we've got a tour to, I think it was Australia. We're going to Australia for a couple of weeks or whatever. He said, what I'd like you to do, he said, I don't want you to come. I want you to take the wife and kids, and he said the club will pay for a holiday.
So he come to see me and he wanted a transfer. So I put it to the board. So I said, well, that's what he wants. Okay, let's get him on his bike.
He said, I'll see you when we get back, have a good time. And the Manchester Evening News, front page headlines, Morgan refuses to go on tour. You know, he was... There isn't a word, there is a word to describe him, but again, I'm sure I don't want my kids to hear it.
Doc's team stormed back into the first division.
All I remember is the feeling that there was at Old Trafford in those 2 years. We felt that we could play anybody at Old Trafford, give them 2 goals at the start and beat them.
It was great to go into training because you didn't know when you got in your car and were going training, you didn't know what you were going to do. It was always very entertaining, very great training.
He would come in and grab hold of the team sheet, their team sheet, screw it up and throw it on the floor. That was it. That was enough motivation for you because he wasn't worried about them. He was more worried about what we could do to them. He'd say, don't worry about them. They've got to worry about us.
For the first time since Busby, they were serious players in the championship race and reached the Twin Towers of Wembley in the FA Cup final, where they faced Southampton.
Too many players took it for granted that they were going to win the cup that day against the underdogs.
A carry on to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0. One of the great Wembley upsets, and Bobby Stokes, the little man who made it possible. Meanwhile, Tommy Docherty consoles the Manchester United players who've done so much for football this season, but have missed out when it matters.
The team's youthful enthusiasm had got them this far, but when experience was needed, only Stepney and Buchan were left from the older generation. The rest had all been culled. The Doc promised the fans they would be back at Wembley next year. For once, he was as good as his word. In 1977, his lads faced a new force set to eclipse the achievements even of Busby's United, the rivals from up the road, Bob Paisley's Liverpool.
So we go there as the underdogs, and I don't remember the last time Man United have gone to Wembley as the underdogs, but it was a big help to us because on the day everything went right for us, everything fell into place.
On by Macari. Smith slips slightly. Jimmy Green off. And is it gone in by Macari, is it? months after losing here, Tommy Docherty, the manager who one or two people rather cruelly said was the most successful failure in football, has today proved them wrong.
We promised you last year we would bring the cup back, and we brought the cup back to the finest supporters in the world.
But as he shared a jolly fry-up with physio Laurie Brown on the morning of the cup final, news of his affair with Brown's wife Mary was about to hit the front as well as the back pages.
Gaffer gets everything, doesn't he? Look, he's in this one as well.
The story was breaking the following day, and I thought I'd better let Matt know just to before he picks up the paper and gets a shock. So I phoned him up. I says, "You all right, boss?" You know the first words he said to me, "Matt, man, drop dead if I'm telling a word of a lie. What has he done now?" I says, "True as God." I says, "You won't believe it, boss. He's got off with Laurie Brown's wife, Mary." Oh, my God. And it was just a few days after that, when he came back, that Tommy Dock got the sack.
Docherty, manager of United since 1972, went to Old Trafford this morning. He wouldn't talk to reporters as he waited for the director's decision. They met at the Cheshire home of Louis Edwards, the club's chairman. Among them was Sir Matt Busby, the former manager, who flew back from Dublin specially to attend today's meeting.
I was shocked because if anybody tells you they knew what was going on, they're liars, because nobody knew.
I mean, Matt was always a great believer that the image of the club should be right. You know, that should be very, very important. There should be nothing to damage the image of the club.
He'd come back, he'd got the team back from relegation. We'd done well in the league. We were now becoming a force. There was great young players coming through. We won the cup, and next thing, you know, he'd gone.
I don't know. I think if Sir Matt had said I'm staying, I'd have stayed. I think Sir Matt, in fairness to him, said no, we cannot tolerate this.
I think the thing that got him the sack wasn't so much falling in love and leaving his wife and marrying the physio's wife. I think what it was making the physio a reserve team trainer and sending him on scouting trips and going around and giving his wife one when he was away. I think that tended to be more in line with him getting the sack.
If you go from United, you might think, oh, well, I'd like to get a team and build them as big as United, or be as good as United. But that's not possible. They're the best and the biggest. You can't build anything like that.
It is the board's intention to appoint a new manager as soon as possible, and applications are invited from managers with experience and proven ability, which should be addressed to the chairman, Mr. Louis C. Edwards, at the club address in confidence.
Why has it taken so long from the initial involvement with Mrs. Brown that we knew about?
That's the statement. That's all the club wished to say, and I don't want to answer any further questions.
Players are funny. They may say, oh, I'm disappointed the manager's gone, and be disappointed, but there's always another one comes along.
Dave Sexton arrived in Manchester to take on what's regarded as the top job in English club soccer.
If you're a manager and you look at the past record and the players and the managers that have been there before, you know you've got your work cut out to hang on to their coattails, let alone do anything wonderful sort of thing.
Busby and the board chose a modest man to succeed the Motormouth. After the personality, the person.
He's a nice chap, but he's got nothing to say. We say to Dave, good morning, I say good morning, but don't quote me. You know, he's that type of fella.
Well, I'm excitement, really. I'm very, very excited. Just, you know, I was thinking about the players.
You know, it's like you open the fridge door and the light's gone, there's nothing there. Sections teams play dull, because Dave's dull.
In fact, give or take some new arrivals like Gordon McQueen, Sexton's team was much the one he'd inherited from the dog. But the man was very different.
Normally, when you take over, when a manager gets a new job, the team he goes to is struggling because they're looking for another. Things haven't gone well, obviously. But this was completely different, and Man United were on a high. So, in fact, I had to be careful that I didn't alter anything. I became a coach, I'll never know. Like to stand up in front of somebody and spout, because I mean, I dread that, you know. But it's something that you've got to do if you want to get on, so you force yourself to do it.
He was football mad. He knew everything about every team in the country. He knew everything about every player. He could tell you when you scored your last goal. He used to have football quizzes in the restaurant on the Friday night before a Saturday game. You know, which used to bore the backside off us, to be truthful. But that was Dave, and you know, he used to have. He was a football encyclopedia, and there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe Man United was just the wrong club for him.
When Doc held the press conference, the press's problem the next day was what to leave out. Dave was not happy dealing with the press.
But PR is exactly what Old Trafford demands. Without an assertive father figure to rally round, the fans grew restless.
You could sense the atmosphere when the Doc was there, and you could sense the atmosphere when Dave Sexton was there, and it wasn't as much.
Meanwhile, Sexton was trying gamely to interest his boys in football homework to improve their tactics.
One morning we went out, we did this corner kick routine where certain signals meant certain things. And after 45 minutes, it hadn't worked because we hadn't scored a goal in 45 minutes. So all the signals had gone wrong, all the planning had gone wrong, and nothing really was happening. Gordon McQueen turned to Dave and said, "Hey Dave, why don't we try this one where you take the corner kick, you chip it over, it hits my big stupid head, and I head it in the back of the net."
In the dressing room, the atmosphere was as raucous as ever. But a generation gap had emerged between the naughty younger boys and head prefect Martin Buchan.
A lot of people misunderstood Martin because he was very thorough in his preparation, and very meticulous, very smart. Sort of everyone stayed away from him.
I think it was one of the lads when it came. I mean, I played the guitar when we were having a night out. Drunk as much as any of them.
And he used to have a comb, a special comb, and he used to be sitting under water, and he'd be, and he used to go, "Oh my God, will you shut up in there?" He used to, "Oh, I'm not singing that song again." And everybody used to come out, and everybody used to tuck their shirts up and go, "Martin, I was the one that was always joking about. I used to do Norman Wisdom, and it was very popular. They'd all be sitting around the dressing rooms getting ready, and all of a sudden I might pop my head into the door and go, "Is there a game today?" Of course, like that would crack everybody up, you know.
Gordon was ideal because he joined us, and you know, he was a cocky cockney, and a few of the lads said, "Hey, we've got to sort this lad out very quickly." And
I just smacked him in the back of the head and said, "Why don't you waken up?"
You know, I thought it was one of them until I saw it was Martin, and then I did see red, and I went after him.
And he said in his wonderful Norman Wisdom accent, "You do that again and I'll kick you in the bollocks."
The odd skirmish apart, Sexton soldiers nearly achieved great things. In 1979, they reached the cup final against Arsenal.
Against Jordan, and McQueen! Gordon McQueen turned it in!
But with seconds to go, they were 2-1 down.
McElroy's through! McElroy's through! And McElroy has done it!
We felt when we got the equaliser, you could see it in the Arsenal players' faces that they'd gone. And if that game was getting into extra time, which everybody in the stadium did, including the players, it's getting into extra time, we will whack them in an extra 30 minutes. But of course, it never quite worked out that way.
There's a minute left on the clock. Brady for Arsenal. Right across, Sunderland! It's there! It's 3-2! Arsenal are back in front for Alan Sunderland. Well, that picture says more than any words can do at this time.
The defeat was symptomatic. Somehow, under Doherty, United were greater than the sum of their parts. Under Sexton, they were less. To strengthen his team for a fresh assault on the league, Sexton went shopping for an old friend.
The one thing you have to do playing for Man U is to perform, and perform consistently. And I wasn't, so I took a little bit of barracking from the supporters, but that's to be expected.
There's been a few players in the history of Manchester United that couldn't handle playing in front of the big crowds. You know, you've made a mistake or two, You know, if crowds start getting onto you, it's a little bit different. 50,000 moaning or groaning at your mistake rather than 5,000.
The chequebook came out again, but Sexton's purchases carried no guarantee. At Nottingham Forest, Gary Birtles couldn't stop scoring. At United, he couldn't start.
Gary Birtles actually played technically very well in that period.
Well, he fell over his own feet there.
He just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net.
Off the bar! Well, how unlucky can you get?
Despite Birtles' problems, United won the last 7 games of the 81 season. It would not be enough for the board.
And there's the final whistle. And Manchester United end their home season on a winning note, doing all they can do to retain an interest in the Championship. Dave Sexton indeed joining the lap of honour as he looks forward to a new 3-year contract as the manager of Manchester United.
But there wasn't going to be any 3-year contract. Never mind that they came second to Liverpool the previous year. The nearly man was to discover that at Old Trafford, nearly is nowhere near close enough.
I think the thing we have to look forward to is that Manchester United is a business, and a lot of the supporters weren't happy this season, and that was reflected in the hundreds of letters we received.
That was the 3rd time I got the sack, because I got the sack at Chelsea. Oh no, it wasn't the 3rd, because I went to Coventry and I got the sack there as well. So it was the 2nd time I got the sack. So, and it's like, it's humiliating, you know, to get the sack publicly. So it's not very pleasant. But, you know, happened to a lot better people than me.
The new club chairman, Martin Edwards, had the summer to find a potential league winner. He looked everywhere, including Southampton and Laurie McMenemy.
I think we've got one in mind.
Is that Laurie McMenemy?
I wouldn't answer that.
There's lots of other names getting bandied around. We weren't quite sure who we were going to get.
Are you interested in Brian Clough?
No, we're not.
A journalist rang me from Manchester. Said there was Manchester United would be very interested in interviewing me. Would I be interested in the job? I said, of course I would.
We're very pleased after such a long time to be able to say that he's been appointed the new manager of Manchester United.
Ron Atkinson had created in West Bromwich Albion a fast, fluent and fashionable team. Almost as important after Sexton, he gave good soundbite.
Life's too short, really. You know, Malcolm Allison has said many great things in his life, but I think the greatest thing he said is it ain't a rehearsal.
The new boss was the antithesis of the old.
Get at it, don't take his place, get at it.
Flash, brash and tandoori tanned.
Ron always used to look a healthy colour and have a suntan all the year round because he had a sunbed in his office at the Cliff. And this was the days when sunbed just first came into being.
It was given to us, and it was supposed to have gone into the medical room. That's what happened. And I think the physio, Jimmy McGregor at the time, said, like Gaffney said, they're all coming in and using this, like, you know, and whatever. I said, well, I tell you what, dump it in my office and we'll have it as a bit of a laugh in there, like, you know.
It's a long way to go to Wembley, but we'll get there, we know.
Ron was the type of guy that would come in, and from the minute he come in, you could hear him, until the minute he left. And that was the sort of fella he was.
I think everyone thought most of the time he'd be wining and dining in all the nightclubs in Manchester and probably thinking very little about the team and all that. But Ron was another one who knew his football from A to Z, and you couldn't catch him out with any football questions. He knew all the answers, he knew all the teams, a bit like Dave Sexton, very thorough.
Come on, then, let's see, you're a winger. Come on, hit. When I got there, I think the better players at the club, or the majority of them, were seeing their better days. You know, it's pretty obvious that we would have to do some, if you like, I said we had to do some major surgery pretty quickly.
Manager Ron Atkinson and Chairman Martin Edwards joined Ryan Robson on the pitch as he signed the 6-year contract that makes him the most expensive footballer in Britain. The package deal that brought Robson to Old Trafford included his teammate Remy Moses and cost the club £2.5 million. It makes United the biggest spenders in football history.
I said, this isn't a gamble, you know. I said, you're not even gambling, paying whatever we paid, $1.5 million or whatever. This fellow's not even, you know, it's not even a gamble, you know, buying a player like him. Because he's pure gold.
It was a big gamble for Ron. I mean, I think a few in the boardroom at Man United would have said, Brian, who? When he was talking about paying £1.5 million for me, because it was a hell of a lot of money at that time.
It was a master signing by Ron Atkinson, and it was very easy to see very early on that there was definitely a lad there with unbelievable strength and power.
At the club, just little incidental things was always done for you. Bathrobes, flip-flops, all things like this. It was just little bits and pieces, but they made you feel as if, you know, it was very professional at the club.
Atkinson's throw of the dice was immediately successful. He gambled and won again with young Norman Whiteside, who became the youngest ever scorer in a cup final. In 1983, Atkinson popped the FA Cup into the trophy cabinet. But in the league, Liverpool still dominated, and that rankled.
It was like Vietnam sometimes, the Liverpool-Man United game. Sometimes it was very, very unpleasant, to be fair. It wasn't hostile, it was hatred.
Atkinson badly needed new talent to have any chance of bloodying the Scousers' noses. In 1984, he bought Danish international Jesper Olsen, and from Aberdeen, Gordon Strachan. The new arrivals found Atkinson an indulgent father.
Usually managers are always saying, you know, get to your bed early and that, no drinking the night before a game. He would allow a player to have 1 or 2 pints before he went to bed because he thought it would help him sleep better.
We used to go out for a few drinks when it was appropriate. I mean, you wouldn't see us out on a Thursday or Friday night, like getting drunk.
I mean, even the night before a cup final, say, do you want a pint before you go to your bed or whatever, which was strange for managers to do.
At Pat Creran's pub, Ron's boys built up a hard-drinking image which, once established, was hard to shake off.
The unfortunate thing about football, with football being such a high-profile game, if a player goes out for a drink, it might only have 1 or 2 pints, but by the time the story is elongated, he's finished up out his brains and getting carried out of here and thrown out of there and all that sort of stuff.
I was with the kind of the C squad, the socialisers. There was the A squad, which was you had to be able to drink 10 pints of beer a night, which I was nowhere near.
Once people have, you know, 4 or 5 pints, the tongue loosens and everybody tells a few home truths, and sometimes things can be sorted out there, and you get to know each other as lads as well then.
The A squad were legendary in the fact that they were led by the captain, and Captain Marvel, Brian Robson.
You get to know the strong personalities and the ones who maybe is not so strong.
I went out one night with them. I think I ended up in Booty Brian's Jaguar, travelling to Bury. Then, I don't know how I got home from Bury, but my wife thought, christened me the new George Best when I got home that night.
It just, you know, cheeses me off a little bit when people say, oh, they drank too much, they drank too much. We were always first on the team sheet, and we had a little bit of success as well, so we didn't do too bad.
Right side shoots!
After winning the Cup again in '85, United were on target to win the league and won the first 10 games of the next season. The gaffer focused all his energy on his first team, the Magic Circle.
I think it worked well for the lads who were actually playing in the team all the time.
When I first got in the team, he said, you're in the Magic Circle, son, which means I'm part of the first team, which was, you know, brilliant.
What happened there, though, was that the fringe players would feel a bit out of it.
One who often felt on the edge of the Magic Circle was Mark Hughes, signed as a schoolboy by Dave Sexton.
I'm not too happy with his attitude. He looked a bit dour, a bit deep, a bit not terribly enthusiastic.
Well, Mr. Atkinson, he got very close to the senior players like Brian Robson and Ian Gordon Strack and forceful characters that he liked to get close to, and I think he had difficulties integrating me into that circle, you know.
Whilst Atkinson continued to have his doubts, Hughes's goals took United to the top of the table in the autumn of 1985. But Sparky's talent had been spotted by Terry Venables, manager of Barcelona, who made an approach to buy him. Incredibly, with United within an ace of the only prize that mattered, Atkinson accepted the offer for his goal machine.
We didn't want him to go, but we really couldn't stop him.
So it was him who wanted to go?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
¿Qué hay en Barcelona?
¿Qué hay en Barcelona?
I think maybe if the club had put me on par with maybe some of the senior players, the type of money that they were earning, I wouldn't have gone anywhere, but they didn't, and I went.
Hughes stayed at United until the end of the season, but for Barca's own political reasons, the deal had to be kept secret.
I mean, it's hard to sit in the dressing room and not tell someone you're getting £1 million a year or something, you know. That's not the figure, I'm just making it up, but, you know, it's hard to say you're not going, although he was sworn to secrecy.
I kept having to deny the fact that I was actually going, and that was difficult to do because I was denied to my friends and family and the fans who deserved to know, really, and that was very difficult.
Hughes's form was fatally affected, and with it, United's league chances. They finished fourth in a race they'd promised to cruise. Atkinson's luck was running out. His third big gamble was his last. He used the Hughes windfall to buy new players, but replacements like Nottingham Forest's Peter Davenport couldn't fill the gap left by the marauding Welshman.
But I remember coming here to Old Trafford and getting booed on my home debut, which I wasn't too pleased with. Some people were resentful that I'd taken Mark Hughes' place, or I was eventually going to take Mark Hughes' place, and they didn't want that to happen.
This season has been a disaster. A string of defeats kept United at the foot of the table for weeks. During recent games, Ron Atkinson has been showing the strain as impatience on the terraces has grown.
As the goals dried up, the pressure to win some silver began to tell on Atkinson's boys, even on the training pitch.
It seems to me that when you're at a club like Manchester United, if Brian Robson farted in training or something like that, I mean, it would hit the back page headlines, you know. Whereas, like, all the other big clubs in the country, you never seem to hear that type of thing.
I was standing right by Jesper as he played the sort of long ball, and Remy came in and caught him late.
There was a kerfuffle, and Remy was quite useful, shall we say.
And then Remy came over and hit him with a bit of a right hook.
They had an altercation which Remy won hands down, he went hands up, easy.
Of course, that was immediately in the papers, and that was one of the things that the press started a bit of a campaign that perhaps Big Ron wasn't the man to manage Manchester United.
Well, Manchester United captain Brian Robson is holding his right shoulder.
The boss had other problems too. Injuries picked up on foreign fields.
I think 7 players went out to the Mexico World Cup, and when we got back, 5 of them needed operations.
Robson has already missed half the season with injury and now off right at the start of the match. And the faces of the United management there, Mick Brown and Ron Atkinson, show the anguish.
I probably should have left him that summer. We just got beaten a cup replay at Southampton. Martin Edwards called me in 2 days later and said, you know, we made a decision that we're going to, you know, we're just finishing your contract.
He's the only man I've ever known who's got the sack and had a party at the same time.
Started off as a quiet drink in my office with a few friends, went on to something else, All of a sudden people started appearing from nowhere, and before you knew it, we were in full swing. When did you think the things started to go wrong, Ron? That's always hard to say, isn't it?
The changed world of United was all too apparent. The camera shutters and the microphones strained at the first appearance of the new boss.
The tradition and the history of the club
and the romance of it has got to be a tremendous attraction. And in my stage in life at Aberdeen, I needed that type of challenge. I needed to go to the biggest and the best.
I think he's a winner. I think he's proved he can be successful, albeit north of the border. When you think he's won 10 trophies in 8 years, he has won the Cup Winners' Cup. His record speaks for itself.
The day I came here, the job was to win the league. Make no mistake about it.
When he came to Old Trafford, he didn't know how big the place was. He was in awe of the place. I mean, it was massive. And he'd come up and train and say to me and Robbo, whatever he'd say, big place this, isn't it? Big club this.
When I first came down, there this thing about press coming round every day. So I stopped that. I said, no way that I'm going to give you something every day, restricting my job by giving you my time every day. The team at the time were second bottom in the league. I think it was quite an oldish team, and times ran out for some of the players. And I felt then there was a bit of work to be done.
The first thing Gordon said when he knew that Alec Ferguson was on his way down was he came in and shook hands with the lad and said, bye-bye, I'm on my way out. Finn Gordon.
In fact, it was Davenport whose days were numbered. Strachan managed to hold on for another 2 seasons. But former Gillingham and Norwich player Steve Bruce was snapped up by Ferguson.
I mean, when I first arrived, which was in '87, the big thing was Manchester United hadn't won the league for 20 odd years now. A club of this stature and this status, that was the holy grail, if you like.
We couldn't accept Liverpool dominating anymore, or Arsenal were now emerging. We had to do something about it.
He huffed and he puffed, but United still only managed second place in the league in 1988. The champions were, who else? Liverpool.
That night I decided I was going to change it.
And when I got back, first thing he said, Norman, the club have given me, 20 million quid to spend, and you're not part of my future plans type of thing. And I found this hard to take because, I mean, I've been there from such an early age and crying and didn't know what to do with myself. Because it was a big wrench. I knew it was going to come, but just wasn't sort of ready for it. You're never ready for talks like that.
Out came the chequebook, and in came Pallister and Ince. Plus, the prodigal son returning from abroad, Mark Hughes.
When I left the club, I always said, well, I'd love to go back there when my time abroad was up. But in reality, I never thought that would happen.
Alex Ferguson was a new, tougher parent, impatient with his boys if their minds wandered from the task ahead of them.
Well, there was many occasions when he'd blow his top, but only because of the will to win that he had.
Peter Barnes came off about 15 minutes to go, and when Fergie came in, he had a screaming match.
The person that was getting the telling off would get what we call the hair drive, where he would stand nose to nose with you and just shout and bawl and end up with your hair behind your head,
Peter had disappeared, and he'd come off 15 minutes earlier than everybody else. And Fergie was looking for him, and he went looking for him. He looked in the bath and what have you. He couldn't find him in there and in the toilet, so Peter seemed to have disappeared.
After 5 minutes, he'd calm down and try and sort out what he was trying to say.
The door opened. It was Peter Barnes, who was freezing. He'd been lying in the bath for the last half hour, and when Fergie came in, he ducked under the water so he couldn't get him.
I've got a temper if I need it. Nothing wrong with losing your temper. That's the right reasons.
The new mix of players needed time to gel, but time is the one luxury the media never give to United managers. And in December '89, familiar storm clouds were gathering.
You've got to hold your hands up to Martin Edwards, who stuck by Alex after he'd been at the club for about 2.5 years, and there was a few people starting to rumble in the background, and Martin Edwards stuck by him.
The directors never ever mentioned the possibility that there would be a change with Alex Ferguson, because we knew he was right.
Lee Martin from left back, an inspired run on the far side.
The youthful promise that unexpectedly brought him his first trophy, the FA Cup in 1990, soon began to flower. The new sons of Old Trafford, Fergie's fledglings.
It's the young new blood at Old Trafford, which has put Manchester United back into the FA Cup.
I've been with City as a kid, at the centre of excellence, and they sort of assumed that I'd signed for him, but no one actually asked me to sign for him. So I went to Man United for a week and loved it there.
By the end of this season, Ferguson will be United's longest-serving manager since Busby. Keeping young men like Ryan Giggs training and away from the predators is just part of his working day.
Ferguson remembered with horror what had happened to George Best. He didn't want it to happen again.
I don't want them going to open shops here, there and everywhere, or being out every day of the week doing commercial things or charity things. All these things have to be controlled. Energy is so vital with footballers, because we're playing cup finals every week out there.
Fergie's lads began to accumulate trophies. The FA Cup, the European Cup Winners' Cup, the Rumbelows Cup. But the one that proved you really were better than your peers still eluded him: the league.
Mark Walters forced the ball home to leave United's fans wondering why Alex Ferguson and his team had become the latest squad to fail to satisfy a 25-year-old craving at Old Trafford.
Well, I think that was the lowest point in my career, definitely. You know, where we hadn't won it, or we hadn't achieved anything.
In 1992, Leeds, chivied by Gordon Strachan, stole the league after United had led on the final bend.
And everywhere I went, people were, you know, saying about the league and, you know, when are you going to win it? You know, are we going to win it? And then you started to think, you know, how much it meant to him.
The media blamed Fergie for letting his own impatient jitters get to his team.
I think he felt we were very nervous. I remember before the Liverpool game, he brought in a comedian from somewhere for the pre-match meal. I think it must have been very hard for the comedian because we weren't really in the mood, but he did his best.
Much of Leeds' success that year was thanks to an outrageous Gallic import.
That's a mark! 3-2 to Leeds United, and the Frenchman scores his second.
So Ferguson bought him, an unrepeatable bargain, at £1.2 million.
Il est une star, Eric Cantona. Il est un ange, il est un mélange insolite rare.
I don't think anyone realised how good a player he was until he came to Manchester United. Until you've seen him first-hand in training every week, then you realised that he was something special.
King Eric slipped on the crown left in the changing room by Dennis Law and formed an unstoppable front line with Giggs and Hughes. A threesome to trip off the tongue with the ease of Law, Best and Charlton. In 1993, Ferguson's link-side single-mindedness paid off.
Manchester United have won the FA Premier League title, their first league championship for 26 years.
And that's the moment Old Trafford has been waiting for since 1967. Sheer delirious delight.
At last, the ghost of the Busby inheritance was laid to rest.
It didn't really hit us until all the lads got together and they're congratulating each other. And it was just a sense of relief and just, you can't explain it really. It's like when you score a goal, you just can't explain.
It's a proud moment for everybody concerned, but I think it was all just a relief to us all. The party we had and was the best party I think I've ever been involved in, purely because I think the people close to you as well realised the tension and the relief that it was all over, and eventually you'd won the league.
After a generation, the successor had been found, the new godfather of Old Trafford.
The sweetest moment for me is the last minute of a victory. After that, drains away from me quickly. The memory's gone in half an hour. It's gone for me. It's like a drug, really. You need to then reenact it all over again to get that buzz again, that last minute feeling. That's the best moment. You're shouting out the referee, blow that bloody whistle.